What's up everyone, I'm Eldridge and I'm decloaking the patch for you, this time for 0.4.1. The way this works is Wargaming doesn't always put everything in their patch notes or their change logs, and so I go out whenever a new patch comes out and look through all the ships and see what has actually changed. All the changes are displayed on the screen, feel free to pause the video as you need. In the meantime, I'm going to go over the changes that I think are very important to mention, and they are mostly the hidden ones. So first off, we have the unique ship change section. The Hashidate has lost 1,900 hit points, apparently because it was way too overpowered. We were informed that the Furutaka was going to be buffed, and it has been buffed, not by a whole lot, but the torpedoes are very nice. Now we were told that the Mogami's 155mm turrets were going to have less hit points and thus would be knocked out more often. However, we were not told that the traverse was also going to increase. It is now 51.4 seconds as opposed to the 40 seconds that we have right now in the game. The in-game UI does not reflect a buff to the Mutsuki's torpedo reload. It was mentioned in the patch breakdown, changelog, whatever you want to call it, but it is not reflected in the game. Now I did not try out the Mutsuki on the test server because I'm not going to grind on the test server. You must be out of your mind. So whether or not this is just a bug in the UI, we'll just have to wait until the patch actually comes out. Apart from that, we've had just some more turret traverse changes in some of the destroyers. The Wix now has a torpedo upgrade, and the upgraded torpedoes are the stock torpedoes on the Clemson, which is definitely a very nice boost for the Wix. Kongo, Fuso, Nagato and Amagi now all have an additional hull upgrade that has to be bought. Basically, the current hull upgrade is going to be split into two, with the first one providing you with all the necessary bits and the second one providing you with just some extra anti-aircraft guns. The current research cost is going to be reshuffled onto all the new upgrades, which makes a few of them quite a bit cheaper, especially the first hull upgrade, the one that gives you all the important bits like better rudder shift time, more hit points, better armor. All of that you get on the first hull upgrade for much cheaper than it was before. But the overall research cost for every ship has not increased. We were told that the chance to cause fire on Japanese ships would be reworked, and it has been reworked. However, it's not actually a nerf for all ships. Japanese ships with 203mm guns, that being the Furutaka, Aoba, Miyoko, Mogami, Ibuki, Atago and Zao, have all had their fire chance increased by 1%. Every other Japanese ship has however received a nerf of about 1 to 2%, and the 120mm guns on the Hashidate now deal 100 more maximum HE damage, probably to make up for the reduction in hit points. The changelog did allude to some carrier changes, and boy have there been carrier changes. The changelog did talk about a fighter rebalance across all tiers that would bring them closer together in DPS, and I'm sure some of you were interested in how that actually works out, and here you go. Pretty much every carrier in the game except for the Shokaku has had their fighters either buffed or nerfed and sort of brought into a much more gradual increase. Now what they said in the changelog that this would make it easier for lower tier carriers to fight higher tier carriers, I still don't really see, because it's still a flat out DPS increase over the tiers, so you're still going to do less damage and thus lose your planes faster. Given you might be able to kill a few planes in return, but in the end you still have less planes in total and you still do less damage, so you are gonna lose all your planes. But of course the difference is a lot less severe as it was before. The big change was also of course the change to the loadouts on the Japanese carriers, and they all have been shuffled around a little bit. Some of the upgraded loadouts are now the basic loadouts for various carriers, but those options are still available. The only one that has really changed is the suicide loadout, and that has completely gone for pretty much all of them. And you are now left with much more balanced loadouts, and the suicide loadout specifically has been replaced with a fighter heavy loadout. For example, the 0 fighter, 3 torpedo bomber, 2 bomber setup on the Ryujo has been replaced with a 3 fighter, 1 torpedo bomber, 1 bomber setup. The other setups are still there though. And finally, the first 3 Japanese carriers have had their ship detection range nerfed. Not significantly, but they have been nerfed and brought in line a little bit more with the Americans. And now lastly, the biggest change of this patch, and the one that was completely missing from the changelog, is this. Every single ship in the game has had its rudder shift time buffed. Now this buff of course has varying effect. For example, all the destroyers have had their rudder shift time buffed by less than 1 second, except for the Gearing, who has got exactly 1 second. For cruisers it's generally 1 to 3 seconds, and for battleships it's anywhere between 3 and 8 seconds. Now call me paranoid, but to me this looks like another destroyer nerf. I mean, a better rudder shift time of course means that you can shift better from one direction to the other, but half of this increase of course also goes into how quickly you can turn in one direction. And that's still between 2 and 4 seconds faster on a lot of these ships. Sure, you could say, oh, but the destroyers have gotten a rudder shift time buff as well. But for them, it's not really that much. I mean, yes, the Minekaze and the Mutsuki have now a 2.1 second rudder shift time, which means they go into a full turn in 1.05 seconds, which is of course very, very crazy. But then again, before the patch it was 1.4 seconds. So the difference really isn't that big. And if your rudder shift time is already at 3.5 or 2.8 seconds, then that extra little bit really doesn't make that big of a difference. The real difference only comes in when you start nerfing destroyers to have less than 3.5, like they did with the Gremiashi. The Gremiashi at 5 second rudder shift time was awful, but at 3.5 it's completely serviceable just like all other destroyers. However, if you take for example the Amagi, which went from 20.4 seconds to 12.1 seconds, which is an increase of 8.3 seconds, that now means the Amagi can perform a turn from going straight in 6.05 seconds. And that is a very big deal when it was 10.2 seconds before. Once again, to me, this looks like another destroyer nerf. You know, at the end of closed beta, I had kind of turned this into a joke where it said, oh, it can't be a World of Warships closed beta patch without another destroyer nerf, but apparently it just seems to be par for the course. Seriously, if anyone can justify this for anything other than a destroyer torpedo nerf, go ahead, I'm really curious to hear other explanations. But to me, a destroyer nerf is all I'm seeing, and I'm honestly getting absolutely sick of destroyer nerfs. I mean, tier 6 and up destroyers are already really bad, and I just don't see why ships like the Amagi need an 8-second better rudder shift time. It just makes absolutely no sense to me. And by the way, before anyone says that this is targeted at carriers, it absolutely is not. A good carrier captain does not give a damn about rudder shift time. He will drop the torpedoes in such a way that you simply cannot evade them. Your counter against carrier drop torpedoes is simply anti-aircraft and the defensive fire ability. Rudder shift time, however, does matter when the torpedoes are fired at you from like 8, 9, 10, 12 or however many kilometers away. That's when rudder shift time helps you, because you spot the torpedoes at 2 or 3 kilometers distance and then have the chance to turn to avoid them. And this ridiculous change makes that so much easier. Alright, that has been it for this episode of Decloaking the Patch. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and appreciate the effort I go to whenever a big patch comes out. And if you do, please consider liking and subscribing and watching some of my other content, because I like to think I put a similar amount of effort into all my content. Tomorrow's World of Warships video will be a Donkey double feature, and on Monday we'll see the first episode of a new set of World of Warships guides, so look out for those. But until then, I've been Eldritch Master Donkey, and I'll see you in another video.